Welcome all. Fantastic to have you. Yes. No, green finance. And we're having a very exciting program, I must admit. I am delighted to have 5 speakers. So the announcement was on 4 speakers, but I'm delighted to have also Christian Gischler with us from the IDB in covering Latin America and Central America. He will be our first panelist of the session. I'm very pleased to have 2 people with me on stage. The third person is coming. He's still stuck in another session. Tamas, for us, the left-hand side, you're here to speak on crowd thermal. Bernard Joost, you're here to speak on direct use and opportunities in the Central American region. We have Ms. Allegra Say from the KfW, who is going to be our second speaker. And Christian, I've heard you're a little bit pressed for time, so I would be delighted if we can start with you. And I wish you a very warm welcome, and I hope you're doing well. And we're really looking forward to hearing from you your observations, but also your perspective on financing geothermal in the Latin America region.
Really have liked to be there with you guys, and traveling a little bit for a while, but it is what it is. I still have no authorization for traveling, so next time. Anyway, just some ideas from the IDB that we are exploring in terms of really how to sell better geothermal energy. And let's start with one that has not been very exploited too much, which is adaptation to climate change. Now, all projects really exploit the mitigation part of climate change, which is fine, no problem with that. But what we are trying to do is to really make the case that geothermal can go further, and that can really be an element of resilience to a grid. And by saying that, we want to say, for example, in Central America, when 2 hurricanes struck Honduras back to back last year, the Geoplatanares plant operating in Honduras worked perfectly well. When we had the droughts in Chile, the plant in the north at 4,000 meters of elevation worked pretty well in very arid and very harsh conditions. When we had the hurricanes in the Caribbean Sea, we had the plant located in Guadeloupe in the French territory had no problem. And the same goes for many other areas in Latin America and along the world. So we really want to make a big deal about this feature, that this technology shows that because you have geothermal energy in your grid, you're actually making your grid more reliable and more resilient to impacts of climate change. And therefore, at the moment of an auction or a bidding process where other technologies are being incorporated to the grid, this has to be taken into account. And we're trying to work with the governments in Latin America in particular, so that this is really acknowledged and taken into account. That's factor number 1. Factor number 2, I think we need to make also a bigger, say, sell pitch in terms of green hydrogen. Geothermal power has the ability to produce baseload power, as we all know. But the generation of green hydrogen has 2 big variables. Not only price, which has been long discussed, mainly in what solar and what wind energy can do. But those are both intermittent, and if the price is not very, if it's too low, well, fine. But geothermal can eventually enter into the equation at a slightly higher price, but with a higher capacity factor. The higher capacity factor makes the electrolyzers operate much better, and therefore there is a better production of green hydrogen. So therefore, there is a better and bigger chance that all the projects that are being done, particularly in the case of hydrogen, of geothermal, can look into the hydrogen as a new variable where to explore and expand. And along the same line is that until now, we have produced energy mainly for local production. And this is, by the way, the third aspect. We have produced energy for the local production. Or since sometimes we have sold to the neighbors, neighbor countries. But the opportunity that hydrogen gives us is that with this baseload power, we can eventually take this power, transform that into green ammonia or green methanol, and then export it, and opening therefore a new avenue that can really open many doors for in this case Latin American countries, but this is valid for Africa and for Asia as well. So I think that these are great opportunities that we need to really harness. The direct use, I think my colleagues there will talk about. I think we need to make a bigger deal about that as well, linking direct use not only to the traditional part, but also about decarbonization of industry and how geothermal can play a role in that, particularly in heating and cooling in industry, and therefore value better what geothermal can do. So I'll leave it until there, Marit, and then we can maybe jump in another discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Christian. And I know you're pressed for time, so what we could do, if you don't mind, I have two questions here for you. And maybe you want to take them now, and then you're free to go, so to speak. One is we see a movement, oil and gas, shifting into geothermal. Now, how does that work for you? When you look at the region and you see oil and gas opportunities and also the huge scale of what that offers to geothermal in the region, do you think there is a finance opportunity there as well for oil and gas?
Absolutely. And I tell you maybe three examples there. As you know, the oil and gas have a huge amount of experience in drilling, and many of the oil and gas companies have approached geothermal companies to start doing partnerships and looking at possibilities to start using their experience and expertise into drilling. So that is number one. Number two is that some companies, particularly Shell and other companies, have invested in geothermal companies, like the case of Ever. And so it's looking at a potential new area of expansion. And number three is that we are working in Latin America, and this is also related to direct use, sort of, in areas where we had oil production. And this is in many areas where we had oil and gas production, there are wells that are not in operation. And those wells happen to have a heat between 70 and 110 degrees C, give or take. Therefore, what happens is that you have the energy to produce some electricity. There is an example in Colombia just doing this, that is using that heat, turn it into electricity. And now I would add, what if that electricity that comes from an abandoned oil and gas well is turned into green hydrogen? And then we can use the infrastructure of an oil and gas facility and start pumping, green hydrogen in order to really and truly decarbonize the oil and gas sector. So, it's starting little by little, but I think this is a very clear approach of what we can do in terms of decarbonizing that sector.
Super. Thank you very much, Christian, and thank you for being with us today. And I wish you all the best and hope to see you soon as well.
Thank you, Barry.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Miss Allegra Seib. She's from the KfW, and she will speak on the GDF, which is the Geothermal Development Facility, also in the Latin America region. Allegra, morning. Well, for you,
morning.
Yeah, afternoon, I should say.
Afternoon.
Morning to Christian, afternoon to you. How are you?
Thank you very much, Marit, and thank you. It's a pleasure to join this panel. As you said, I'm working as a portfolio manager in KfW Development Bank, and there I'm responsible for the geothermal development facility. Many of you know that this is a climate initiative to promote geothermal development in Latin America. We have 11 eligible countries there, and it's focusing on the early stage risk mitigation and providing grants for survey studies and contingent grants for exploratory drilling work. In this facility, the European Union, with its Latin America investment facility, as well as the German federal government, are providing substantial financial support. And in the last year, the support was even increased with an increase in funding intensity for drilling projects, which shall allow even a greater focus on drilling projects in Latin America and confirming this support. Yes, I'm happy to join this panel and to dive deeper into the current status of GDF and have some conversations on that. Christian already expressed the great benefits of geothermal power, which GDF is focusing on, and happy to discuss further.
Thank you, Allegra. You're less pressed for time, so we will have you in our panel discussion. So thank you very much for the introduction and the introductory remarks. I'm moving now to Julian Richardson, who just came out of another session. So thank you for joining us as soon as you could. Julian Richardson is CEO of Parhelion, and he will be speaking about a new insurance project, GeoFutures Green Invest. Julian, it's a pleasure to have you here. Could you tell us a little bit more about the role of insurance in financing geothermal?
Sure. Thanks, Marit. Pleasure to be here, if a couple of minutes late, but better late than never. So yeah, I'm Julian. I'm the CEO of Parhelion. Parhelion is a specialist insurance and risk finance business focused entirely on climate finance and sustainable investment opportunities. So as the insurance guy, what has insurance got to offer in terms of the geothermal sector and sustainable finance and green finance? Well, importantly, insurance is it's a much misunderstood part of the capital stack. What I mean by the capital stack is how capital is arranged to finance a project. You have your different layers of equity and different layers of debt and subordinated in between. But without insurance there, none of that debt and equity ever gets deployed, because equity is really there to take the commercial risk. If this project does what it says it's going to do, it has a good management team, it'll deliver the returns we expect. Insurance is there is what happens if that project doesn't get the fair wind, it doesn't get all the right things that even the best management team can happen. So earthquakes, hurricanes, bad resource assessments, and so on. Insurance is therefore, we say, it's the sort of glue and the oil of the capital stack, because nothing gets invested unless it's insured. And so if you want to allocate risks to different pools of capital, it's important to understand what risks those capital providers will take. And insurance is an important capital provider. It's a $2 trillion pool of capital, right? And to make the geothermal industry scale to its full potential and at speed, we need to bring in all forms of capital. Specifically for the geothermal sector, what we've been doing is looking at the resource development risk and the resource drilling, because we're working with Geothermex and under a contract initially with the IFC, we identified that although there are risks throughout the geothermal project development, those risks happen in all projects. You know, you've got to get the engineering right, you've got to get the permitting right, you've got to have the right political environment. The one thing that is different about geothermal is proving the resource and developing that resource. And that's quite an expensive process. The problem with it is that even after you've drilled a couple of wells, there is still a small probability of a high impact event that you could lose all the money. And that risk profile for an equity investor is fundamentally unacceptable. They see breaking even as a failure. The risk of impairing their capital will just put them off completely. But the low probability, high impact event is what the insurance industry does. Those are the risks that we take in the insurance industry. So mobilizing insurance capital to underwrite development drilling risk, so to put a floor on the downside of a drilling program. If you're thinking you're going to drill 5 wells with an expected output of, say, 20 megawatts, what happens if you get 20 megawatts? Great, we're all happy. What happens if you get 15 megawatts? What happens if you get 10 megawatts? What happens if you only get 5? And so putting a floor on that by the insurer saying, okay, you drill your 5 wells, we'll guarantee that if you get less than 15 or 10, this is the insurance payout that you get. That completely changes the risk profile for the equity investor, and it makes it easier for them to deploy their capital. So that's the role of insurance in a nutshell for the geothermal sector.
Thank you. Very informative. Thank you. As I said before we go into the questions, and also from the audience, I do invite you to think of quite a few critical questions for our panelists. It's my pleasure to go to Bernard Joost of the GIZ. You can tell what the GIZ stands for. Talking about direct use opportunities and specifically the GEO2 program, I should say, in the SICA countries, which are the Central America countries. Pleasure to have you, Bernard. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Marit. Thank you for the organizers to invite us, to invite the GIZ. Who is the GIZ? We are the German Corporation for Development. Our project name is Geothermal Heat Utilization for Industrial Processes in the SICA member countries. Short, GEO2, it's the second phase. We're working there for more than 5 years on direct use projects in these 8 countries. On behalf of the BMZ, the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, and yeah, I'm really, really happy to be here with you today. Thank you, Marit, again, to invite us. The IJ is really important for us because, yeah, we left the region. We are not anymore only there in Central America. Now we are going internationally. Today, I have also here my colleague, Rafael Parada. He's here in the first row. Rafael, please raise your hand that you can see. If you have got technical questions to any project, direct use project in Central America, you can ask him and he will try to answer it. So, yeah, talking about financing. I made a little research and talking about trillions. I was thinking, okay, like $2.36 trillion are available at this moment in green bonds. Like, wow, it's a lot of money. Do we have enough money to invest in renewable projects and geothermal projects, especially in direct use projects in Central America? Normally the answer is yes. Money is not the problem. For example, you have in Costa Rica, there are in several facilities more than $100 million available for green projects, renewable projects. So, but we have a problem. We have money, but we have no projects. Sometimes there's a lack of information. There's a lack of expertise. That is the reason why we need you. You are the experts from all over the world, and we need you to come to visit our region and to support us, to help us to develop more direct use projects. we have the best example here in Iceland. You see what a little country made out of their potential. If you go, for example, to Guatemala, you can dry coffee, you can dry some grains, you can dry fruits, you can have a little fish farmery over there. So, and a lot of need, of course. What is the opposite of this side here? We need cooling, climatization of buildings and other facilities over there. So, yeah, there is a big GDF fund, with my colleague from KfW, Allegra, told you. It's a really great initiative. I'm really happy that Latin America has the opportunity to install more power plants. Perfect. But what should we do, or what can we do with the direct use projects? A lot of banks said, oh, it's boring. It's like maybe $25,000, maybe $50,000. It's a little project, a lot of work, a lot of paperwork, so we don't need this. I think, or no, I'm convinced, together with the IGA, we need these projects. We are hopefully ending this pandemic soon, and we need green recovery projects. We need perspective, and we can give this perspective to the people all over, and well, not only in the sicker countries, so in Central America, so all over the world. So, for example, so we have possibilities here to look a little bit in the future, what should be great to add to this $2.36 trillion available for green projects, maybe only a particular, only directed fund, a bond to direct use projects for Central America or for Latin America. Maybe they told me yesterday, hey, you have to start maybe with $30 million or euro. I said, well, okay, maybe 500 little projects, a project portfolio for Latin America. They need also insurances. So maybe in 5 years, we can execute in all the Latin American countries this quantity of projects. So this is an idea, together with World Bank, IDB, and others, other big institutions. Hopefully this will happen, talking about the future. What do we have here in present? Talking about the IGA, and well, together with GIZ, we can support you if you're a developer, international developer, with develop PPPs. PPP stands for public-private partnerships. You can start with a 100,000 little direct use project until 2 million euros. There are a lot of possibilities, and if you're interested, then we can talk to you more in detail. How does it work? But you can apply for these funds and develop projects in developing countries. So we would be happy to have you over there in Central America. And the last thing is I want to mention then, is what we will hear after me about crowdfunding. But before I will go in some details, I've got a question to you, and please only raise your hand. Who of you likes cheese? Are here any cheese lovers? Please. A lot. It's good. Maybe some vegetarians. Yeah, great. Okay. Would you like to have geothermal cheese? Yeah. Okay. Great. So we have a lot of interest here. I would like to stake out here a project what we are supporting. It's not economically feasible. Sorry, it's not. But we need you. We need your money. We are doing some kind of crowdfunding, but we will hear more about this. Please come to the IGA booth, visit my friend Gregor. He went with me to a little cheese maker in the south of Honduras, and the idea is to change the wood burning production to a geothermal production. We have a lot of information about this. We will give it to you afterwards if you're interested in, but please, let's make geothermal cheese happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Cool. I like that very much. Good call to action, yes. And a very nice bridge to crowdfunding, because it's my huge pleasure to have Tamas with us here today. He represents a project in Europe called Crowdthermal. And of course, when you talk about and when you speak about financing geothermal, crowdfunding is not your usual topic that you bring into. So I am delighted that the European Union thought that was interesting for geothermal to look at. It is in development. You will tell all about it, but I think it is just very, very good to see that in Europe, several member states are getting interested to see if that gap between getting finance close can be filled with some crowdfunded money. Tamas, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marit, for the introduction. And I'm Tamas Mikrovic from the European Federation of Geologists, and I'm representing a European view. So as Marit mentioned, CrowdThermal is a European project, and I'm going to talk about crowdfunding and CrowdThermal project. When I sent my bio to Marit, my short background, I realized that finance is not included in my background description, and now I'm here in the Green Finance panel. But still, I would like to have a short introduction. So what is crowdfunding and how CrowdThermal is contributing to achieve the climate change goals and how to become climate neutral, and ultimately how to forward geothermal project and how to make them available for the public, which is all what crowdfunding is about. So crowdfunding is just another kind of investment, and when the funds are raised directly from the public without going through the bank first. And I think the key moment or the key thing in crowdfunding is that it creates involvement. And I think we talked about this morning about the geothermal decade and also to become ambassadors of geothermal energy. I think that's what we need. We need involvement of the people who are going to benefit in the end from geothermal energy to heat their houses, to have cleaner air, and all the benefits of geothermal energy. So crowdfunding, what's bringing to the table is involvement and participation. So in Europe at the moment, the crowdfunding market is quite fragmented and it's very national. And partly it's because of the local regulations. And the good news is that a new regulation is coming in the middle of November that will create a harmonized European market for crowdfunding. And that will allow crowdfunding platforms to participate in international projects or to provide services in other countries once obtaining the license in their member state. So that will greatly help. And there's another aspect of this that it's usually a national thing, that there are a lot of unknowns in this. So geothermal is one unknown, and also bring in an international player to local public. It's usually done with cooperation with the local members, so with local organizations, and but facilitating this new regulation to have international crowdfunding platform, which is required to ensure that all is done well and is protecting the investors. That will greatly help this emerging and new opportunity that geothermal can tap into. So CrowdThermal project is about, it's a Horizon 2020 funded project from the European Commission. It's a European consortium of 10 partners from the social sciences to finance, technical organizations, and also multidisciplinary organizations. This is a 3-year project. We are in the 3rd year already. And our mission is to democratize the development of geothermal energy. So we want to have the people to give the opportunity for them to participate in the development of geothermal energy, which is not an easy task. So it's easy to put solar panels on the roof. It's not that easy for simple people like you and me to directly participate in geothermal project at the moment. But with crowdfunding, that could be a big facilitator to invite the people, to invite the local community, and to ultimately to achieve co-ownership of this geothermal project. And that will have actually two benefits. So for the people, it's an investment, so there will be financial benefits for them, but which is also good for the project developer, of course, to gain more funding. But it's also can avoid many obstacles for the geothermal developers, that we have the public on their side, and the public can be their ambassadors that can resist as a unified front against outside criticism. So crowdfunding can help a lot in this. And what is coming up after the crowdfunding project is that we are working at the moment services that will help the community, also help the project developers and local authorities to how to tap into this new potential. So these new services are going to be available in February, and it will be available even after the duration of the project. So all these services will help for project developers, communities, and local authorities to use this new and emerging tool, crowdfunding.
Thank you. Very good. Yeah, I like the initiative very much on crowdfunding. Is there already a project that has been crowdfunded that you are aware of?
Yes, one of the early tasks that we did in the project, it was done by Crowdfunding Hub, one of the partners, is that they looked at best like case studies, successful case studies, and also bottlenecks that what happened and what are the successfully crowdfunded geothermal projects. For example, probably the most famous one is in the UK, Cornwall, but there are also other crowdfunded geothermal projects in the Netherlands, I think. And we have a report about these successful case studies, which are all available on the website, so crowdthermal.eu. And then the news corner, all these reports are available and accessible to download. So there are many successful case studies already, which is very important to show that this works. This has been worked in this case already, and it could work in your project as well.
Great. Thanks, Tomasz. Thank you very much. I read the IEA net zero outlook the other day, and first of all, we were not mentioned, geothermal, which is never a good sign when you're not mentioned in a high-level report from the IEA. But where we were mentioned was that we were not on track, which was also not good to read. Anyway, so we're not on track when it comes down to geothermal electricity production. And Allegra, I'm moving to you in the Latin American region. So I think KfW have been fantastic supporting, and actually not just the Latin America region, you are supporting actually the worldwide development of geothermal. But, you know, what can we do better in order to make Fatih Birol right in his energy outlook that we are on track? In other words, how do we develop more projects? What's your stand on that?
That's a really important question, good question on that. In GDF, currently we have 6 active projects. This is 4 surface studies and 2 drilling projects, but obviously we would like to see more projects. And what we did last year to react to constantly improve the mechanism is to increase the funding intensity for confirmation drilling projects up to 70% of eligible costs and a maximum of 9.8 million euros. This is the main scheme or the main instrument of the Geothermal Risk Mitigation Fund to give contingent grants to project developers. And in the case of a successful drilling, which will be a program of 3 wells at least, the project would have to repay the grant, and in the case it is not successful, would be considered as a non-repayable grant. And yes, as I said, currently 6 projects. We have 60 million euro committed to confirmation drilling and 3.3 million to surface studies, but there are funds available. And we are looking to open a new call next year and inviting all project developers to present their projects to see more. What we see are obstacles or the challenges is in financing to find this co-financing in the exploratory phase, so early stage exploration drilling. And that's one reaction we did, increase funding intensity. The second and not less important factor is regulatory framework. We see within the project we have seen within GDF that this is the main topic. They need clear regulatory frameworks and a process on obtaining concessions and the renewal of concessions. That's something that is really important. What we see in Latin America, this is in 11 countries. We are promoting beginning from North America, Central America, and the Andean region, that there are promising signals in countries, but there's also the need to further improve this regulatory frameworks, and also obviously the topic of prices, favorable prices that benefit the benefits of geothermal power. I think that's something which really would improve and help projects to come into operation and implementation.
Thank you. Thank you for the answer. I think that's very, very insightful indeed. I'm gonna, Julian, the bonds and the fact that there is so much money available, but there are no projects. Now, you talked about the role of insurance in that, because I think you said something very interesting about that low probability but high impact, and that's exactly what the insurance industry is all about. How can we do that better with the insurance money involved?
Well, I think, to also answer your previous question about how we attract money, that what would we change in the geothermal industry? It is our ability to attract capital, and that means, there are projects out there, but they have to be investment grade, i.e., they have to be well developed enough that an equity investor and debt provider and an insurance company are willing to put their capital behind them. So it is really important, the role of GIZ and the different risk mitigation facilities that are out there, GRMF in East Africa, the LAC one in Latin America, and so on. These are really useful to pump the prime or develop the pipeline of good projects. But these projects have got to be presented to the financing community in a comprehensive and robust way. And that means collaboration across the disciplines of the geothermal industry, the geology, the 3Gs that Anne talked about. It takes the engineering skills, and it's about thinking about how do we attract capital? Because there is projects and there is capital, but the projects it's a competition for capital. And you're not competing with other geothermal projects, you're competing with wind and solar and oil and gas, and you're competing with retail and everything else. So if we want to attract that capital, we've got to present the projects in an effective way. We've got to de-risk them and get the risk-return profile correct. And that's one of the roles of the insurance industry, is to get that risk-return profile appropriate to get capital into the projects and into the industry. So, on a future WGC, I'd love to see all the brilliant presentations that have been done over the last day or two and tomorrow, but I'd also love to see a financing stream. How do we attract capital into the market? When I asked in the previous sector who wants to see more money in the geothermal industry, or who has a project that's looking for capital, everyone sort of put their hand up pretty much. When I said, who's here to invest in geothermal? No one, right? And so we need to have BlackRocks, the Blackstones, JP Morgans, all the big private equity players. We should be attracting them, and we should be presenting a robust pipeline of projects from these different facilities that the multilaterals and the GIZs around the world have been trying to create this pipeline and get them financed and celebrate the wins, because there are projects out there, but we have to attract the capital.
Yeah. And just one more question, Julian, because I think it's nice to have someone who is actually not just from geothermal. In your opinion, are we robust enough? Are we providing that robust pipeline already? Or can we do better when it comes down to that project formulation?
Difficult. My intuition is that there are good projects out there, but are they being presented in a way that allows capital providers, whoever they are, debt, equity, insurance, to simply come in and go, okay, yeah, I get it, I'll put my capital behind it. One of the things I think that the Geothermal Risk Mitigation Facility in East Africa has done well is instill some discipline in the project developers to make sure that they're doing robust project development, so that capital providers can look at them in a comprehensive way and make an investment decision. I mean, I oversimplify, but is it insert money here, or do I have to go through 3 years of questions and answers? And well, when, you know, it needs to be presented as a comprehensive, well-developed project. And they are out there, but I think there needs to be a little bit of a shift in the industry about how those projects are presented.
Yeah, and I guess, I mean, if I look at numbers in terms of renewable energy investment, and you see the amount of money that gets invested into solar and wind, which is in the hundreds of billions of dollars, and you look at what was invested in geothermal last year was 700 million. And you think, no, this is the reason why we're not on track. And at the other hand, I also appreciate what you said, Bernard, and what you also said, Julian, is that the money apparently is not the issue. So, but there is a mismatch between financing geothermal and the amount of money available. And that's a gap that I'm specifically interested in, Bernard, what you said about that. You know, if you want, you go to a bank, ask for 50,000 for a project, you're not going to get it because they're going to laugh at you, or they say, well, you know, that's not my portfolio to manage. So how do we do that then better, Bernard? What's your suggestion?
Thank you for the question. Can you? Yeah. Well, first of all, I think most of you don't speak Bankish. This is what we have to learn first when you think about how to present a project. On the other hand, what you mentioned, competing with solar, wind, and the other renewables, we had all night long discussions about it. Geothermal is like the mother-in-law of renewables. It's there, it's important, we need it. Without the mother-in-law, my last year wouldn't be here. So we have to work more on this and to make more and more, promotion. We have to promote more geothermal. Talking about direct use and talking about other panels, which we heard before, direct use paved the way for the big, gigantic projects. So invest 50,000 here or $25,000 there. It's not interesting at this moment, but you are sensitizing, or you can bring the information to the communities, to people who never thought about something like a big power plant which costs millions. So I think this is the way we should go, and to translate it more to the community, to the bankers, and to bring in more, it's more visible. We need more little projects that the community see what benefits they can get out of it.
Yeah, no, good. That's very good. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes.
My name is Michael Brown, and I come from both sides, the money and the project. And my observation is, in fact, that we do need the mitigation through insurance. I'm currently co-developing Germany's largest project in Bavaria, and we have offered risk mitigation through guarantees. But if I look at the economics, I see that although we get like 90% of the drilling costs guaranteed, we still have initial costs, and we have acquisition costs and other costs, and we have like 50% of the equity in risk. And it's extremely difficult to convince investors to take that risk, simply because they make the comparison to wind or to solar, not so much anymore, but to wind, and say, oh, I could yield 10%, 12%, whatever, in that country on my wind park, why would I incur this risk? So that's the first thing. The second thing is there are hardly any bankers or equity investors understanding the exploration risk and issues related to this. In South Germany, in the South Molasse, we have 101 geothermal drillings. 4 of these drillings went wrong and were dry. 1 was given up. So we have an unbelievable, unparalleled ratio of success, and still people would tell you, oh, I have a 4% risk, I may be losing $15 million on this investment. So I think the issue is we need to combine instruments like yours, Julian, but also KfW. I would love to. I appreciate what KfW is doing in South America and other parts of the world, but we need KfW also in Germany to gap this bridge between the instrument that you provide or others provide and whatever is left in the risk. And as to pipeline, the pipeline situation is important to a lot of such investors. They say, we don't want to undergo the hustle of understanding geothermal for just one project. Give us a pipeline of 5-6 projects. We want to disperse 500 million in geothermal. Do you have it? And the answer is probably not. Why? Because it takes 3 to 5 years to develop a project. And it takes the developer 3, 5, maybe 2 million euros of investment out of his own pocket. And there are not many companies, which is mostly private companies, which have that money to do that and actually work on a parallel basis, because you have to really work on 3 or 4 projects at a time to come to a sizable portfolio. So I think also we need support on that end. We need more subsidies. I was working in the film finance industry before, and I saw that also, particularly in Germany, there are film funds by governments granted where producers could obtain funding. And I always thought, why wouldn't we do the same in geothermal? Why wouldn't we have development funds? Why wouldn't we be able to provide cash to the developers for so and so many projects, which of course is a grant, but a repayable grant in case of success. I'm very much for repayments of grants, but someone has to support. Now, if you look in Switzerland, we're also working in Switzerland since shortly, and Switzerland has obviously a different program. There is up to 80% support by the federal government on projects on development costs and also on drilling. And you still have 20% risk. And I was talking to producers there was a Swiss convention recently in Fribourg. I did talk to several developers, and they said we still have problems finding the money because of that 20%. So now we're thinking about combining the instruments, and could we combine with federal grants and private risk securitization instruments a structure helping to cover maybe 100% of the investment initially. Another point is yield. People have totally unreasonable expectations on the yield of geothermal projects. We have had a situation with a company stemming from oil and gas looking at our project, and they said, we love the project, it's a great project, but the yield is not high enough. And I was asking, why would the yield not be high enough? Because we talked to private equity funders, and they leverage. They said, we don't leverage. We finance on pure equity basis. So 6-7% is unacceptable in relation to the initial risk that you have. So I think there are so many different aspects of the investment. And I think what we can do, or what we should do, we should talk to the governments in our countries and ask for support on a governmental level. And then we have to engage with people like Julian to get insurance behind it, get grants behind it, in order to amass projects and to be then seen by the industry. Because there's so much money, there's money in abundance for everything in infrastructure, in renewables other than geothermal. But geothermal is a hard ride to get to the money, unfortunately.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that, yes. That's a good intervention, yeah. I think there was one question in there, and that is if KfW would be interested in funding Germany. So, Allegra.
Well, I'm working with Latin America, but actually I wanted to thank you for this comment and also the insights on this in Germany. I know there are programs within Germany as well for renewable energy financing and geothermal. I think there's as well, but obviously the schemes differ from what we implement in Latin America. So thank you for this insight, and for me, I'll have a look as well what we do exactly for geothermal in Germany, and just thanking for this input.
Thank you. Yes, there are two questions. One first and then, yeah.
My name is Ingi Ingason. I've been working in few projects, geothermal projects in Latin America, both central and south. So I welcome having some comments from you of TTF and GIS on the region in terms of energy prices. Because as Julian said correctly, we need to have the correct risk profile for the investors. And even though we find a good risk profile for drilling and project and resource risk we have in the project, if we don't have the energy prices, we can't get anywhere. So in Latin America, both central and south, I have to admit that energy prices are quite low, and I haven't seen really a feed-in tariff. And I question how you are looking at this part of the equation of not only the developing part, but also selling the electricity there of sizable projects. We know we have quite many good spots in Central and South America for development. But have you looked into, I mean, Turkey did a good sample of feed-in tariff scheme. At least they got quite a lot of development going on. So what's your thoughts on the energy prices in the region? Thank you.
I think, Allegra, to you first.
Yes, thank you. I think also that this is, well, it is a challenge for the geothermal projects. What we see in GDF is also a trend to smaller modular projects as a reaction to that, with the expectation to expand those projects in further phases. And yes, the prices, obviously, that's the topic. Like to this, yeah, that would be my comment, that we see the smaller projects on modular scheme, and my impression is that within Latin America, the energy policies are more directed into technology neutrality, not explicitly focusing on one technology. I haven't seen that favoring, for example, auctions. Well, this is planned in Guatemala, I think, an auction for geothermal energy, but regarding the prices of feed-in tariffs, I'm not aware of a scheme that should be implemented soon.
Thank you. Thank you. You want to say? Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe short, because there is one more question.
I make it short, only a
Yeah?
short intervention
Short.
to really
Very short.
quick.
Yeah.
No, only thank you, Allegra. Yeah, talking about Central America, feed-in tariff is always a long way to go. A lot of governments try to work without feed-in tariffs. Take Costa Rica, one of the best places in the world. They try it without any subsidies. And if you look, let's say, not only for the house or the private houses and what they are paying for their electricity, because there are some subsidies. But to take the industry, this would be the main customer. The electricity prices are not really low. They're high, really high. Maybe double, triple what we have maybe in Germany, if you compare it to industrial country. And they have compete in an international global world. So there are a lot of potential to work without any subsidies, for example, in some of these little countries. Really quick, maybe you can afterwards, you can talk a little bit of every country, because every country is like a little world, a tariff world. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, your question.
Thank you very much. My name is Hólmfríður Sigurðardóttir from Reykjavík Energy. We have heard here geothermal Gs involve people, high risks, etc. And now there are only 9 years to 2030. This is the climate decade, isn't it? And well, in my opinion, the highest risk is if we don't spend our money, for example, on geothermal. And looking at the Icelandic development through the decades, because we are not only putting our money into investment and having some yields, we are also looking at quality of life, we are looking at gender equality. And I say so because when I look back 50 years, when increased part of the Reykjavik city area got space heating, for example, that had huge impact on my grandmother or grannies and on my mothers in the society, and on our children. And quality of life, isn't that what is lacking as a criteria in the project? I ask that. And the world, okay, there's COP meeting later this month. The world is crying out loud for green jobs. I think, my opinion is that geothermal utilization is on par with solar and wind regarding green jobs. And then you have the extra bonus quality of life. So isn't that something to take further into the discussion of green financing? And thank you for your excellent words and comments here. Thank you.
Thank you. I like that.
Sure.
Quality of life. Yes, Julian. Yes.
Sure, I couldn't agree with you more. And the GeoFutures, the GeoFutures facility that we've been developing, this was a submission we made to the Green Climate Fund. The Green Climate Fund, for those of you that don't know, is the principal financing mechanism under the UNFCCC to provide financing to emerging and developing economies to develop in a sustainable way. And we proposed a GeoFutures fund, and this will provide early stage direct finance to projects in East Africa and early stage drilling risk insurance, the resource risk that I was talking about. And in that, a big part of the proposition is what it's going to do, not just in terms of yield or profitability, it's about the impact it's going to have. So we need to be able to measure that. So we estimated if we were able to support 600 megawatts of affordable, reliable, clean energy, we could impact 30 million people. And as you say, it's actually the lives of the women that are impacted most positively in that. And we reduce emissions by over 3 million tons. So being able to measure and quantify some of those externalities is really important as part of the pitch to different investors, because those additional criteria are becoming more important to ESG investors. And geothermal certainly has a good story to tell on that. And I would also encourage project developers to think about how to monetize those externalities, whether it be through carbon credits or some other sort of mechanism that is out there. One of the things that we hope will be agreed at COP26 is the Article 6, the international or the rule book for carbon trading markets. And you know, I've never hear of carbon markets mentioned in the geothermal sector, but that's an important additional source of revenue that can be brought to, you know, internalize those externalities of which you speak.
Thank you. Kai, very
Thanks.
quick, because we're running out of time.
Very quick. Okay, thank you. So my name is Kai Mullauer. I'm heading the technical consultant team, doing the fund management for GRMF. So I'm a kind of behalf of the African Union Commission, who is our client. So thank you very much, first of all, for the talks. Exactly that's the thing. And maybe just for GRMF, some issues which experience we also made over the last 7-8 years. And so the first thing is when these risk mitigation facilities, we created the concept also for South America, now with GMF, where thought of, it was always the idea that they give the incentive, first of all, that they work as a market incentive program. Now we see more than 30 projects in Eastern Africa. And a lot of these projects made it already to the drilling. So right now we have 2 drilling projects in Kenya. We have Tulumoye in Ethiopia. But still others, of course, are exactly struggling with these particular issues of equity in the first stages, are struggling with regulatory issues. In some countries, there were not even a regulatory for geothermal at all when we started. But all these things are really getting better. So the very first thing is, the next thing is that these guys are really struggling. They are looking around the world, let's say, for equity. But still, of course, this is Africa. This is in the African context. Investment in the African context, of course, is very difficult. This is why we created that program at that time with an 80% grant on eligible costs for the survey studies, with particular grants for the 3 full-size exploration wells, up to 40% of grants. I mean, this is really very attractive. Why? Because it's Africa. For details, please find us and my team at the booth right at the IGA. And I'm quite happy to make really now a kind of announcement, because we had today in the morning the oversight committee meeting, and it was decided that we will come up next year with a direct use program also. We still have to work out the details for that, because with 2 surveys we really saw that in the Eastern African region we have a huge potential. It can contribute largely to, for example, food security and so on. And of course, these are the smaller projects. The larger ones take their time, but the smaller ones will make maybe a difference earlier. And so we can show up with the geothermal. And the very last things, because due to the position, of course, working for the African Union Commission, we had talks with energy ministers. And it is still the case that we have to play the drum louder. Yeah, we have to be loud. Geothermal is so underrated. It is definitely the hidden champion out there. And if you think now about the hydrogen strategy of Europe, hydrogen in Germany, come on, where it shall come from, yeah? I mean, there's a lot of space maybe in the deserts, and then they are happy with 2,000 full-out hours. But we still have a potential of several thousands of gigawatts alone in Africa, for example. So this could be a next further match where we could get it together. But we have to play the drums out there. It's underestimated, this space load characteristic. They don't understand it, really speaking, even with energy ministers, sometimes they don't understand what potential they have below their feet, and we should be loud for that. Thank you, Mari.
Yeah, guy. Thank you. We've overrun. This means that apparently this is a good topic because people like it. I'm really pleased, but I really have to close it. Also myself, I need to excuse myself because I need to go to another session. I want to thank, first of all, Allegra, thank you so much for joining us and being online. You've missed a lot, I must say, because we're having fun here, but thank you for joining.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to join.
Yes, thank you. Bernard, thank you very much for sharing your experiences, but also talk about the direct use opportunities in the SICA countries. I am delighted that there will be, yes, Kai, also very good to hear that GRMF will open up for direct use next year in Africa. Julian, your product, that's fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences, but also hanging in there, pushing it. Thank you so much. I think you're right, the role of insurance is going to be vital and crucial to unlock capital. And Tamas, I know crowdfunding, it is a very different ballgame. It's a very different aspect of green financing, but I am convinced that once we see a couple of these projects being crowdfunded and hence for geothermal for people, I think that will set the scene for further development. So thank you very much for contributing today. With that, I want to thank you as well for staying here, listening in, and asking these very good questions. I wish you well. I hope to see you tonight for another party. I've heard the theme is James Bond, so come prepared.